temporary governor's study a Beihai inner city. The once dignified study of Governor Kong Rong had become a chaotic war room. Scrolls and maps were strewn across the low table. Half-melted wax dripped from bronze candle holders. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, damp parchment, and barely veiled contempt. After the explosion that destroyed the main government to a Seoin act, the guards still couldn't explain it. Kong Rong had no choice but to relocate his command to his personal study in the rear courtyard. The sudden move had only further shaken the fragile confidence of the city's elite. Inside the room now sat a volatile mix: Kong Rong, tired and disheveled in his scholar's robes, A Chen, his face pale and drawn, Captain Juan, the commander of the remaining city guards, several other military officers, the noble representatives from Beihai's powerful clans, and at the corner, lounging with false composure, sat Zhao Feng, his silk robe spotless, his expression smugly triumphant. The moment Kong Rong sat down, the argument erupted again. "We demand to be released from this detention," shouted Lord Xi, a balding noble with reddened eyes. "Do you expect us to sleep on the floor like beggars, to eat porridge boiled from weevilled rice? Your men cannot even guard their own gates," added Zhao Feng with a cold smile. "And now your own office has been destroyed by rioters, or was it rebels?" "Hard to tell these days," the nobles murmured in agreement, voices overlapping in rising indignation. Kong Rong's jaw tightened. "This is not a detention. You are here for your own safety." Lord Fang stood. "Then let us leave. We'll take our chances outside. At least then, we won't be shivering in dark rooms under guard." Kong Rong looked to Captain Juan, who gave a slight shake of the head. The streets were no longer safe. Even the guards had been overwhelmed in recent skirmishes near the southern markets. "If we let you walk out now," Kong Rong said firmly, "the rioters will see you and descend like wolves. You'll lead them straight to your compounds, and chaos will spread through every noble quarter." "Do you want Beihai to burn?" Zhao Feng leaned forward, a sly edge in his voice. "Then have the army escort us out. Let us leave the city altogether." "That is the least you can do, Governor, as compensation for the disgrace and inconvenience we've suffered." "Compensation?" Kong Rong scoffed. "You think this is a matter of coin? If I divert troops to escort you, the entire city will fall. The walls are thinly manned as at Isa." Zhao Feng's smile vanished. "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before you let Luciani escape." His voice dropped dangerously. "She was promised to me by you. Now she is missing, and you have failed to detain her." "How convenient." Kong Rong's fists clenched on the armrests. "That matter is unrelated and still under investigation." "Unrelated?" Zhao Feng laughed bitterly. "It all reeks of treachery, Governor. If you cannot fulfill your promises, then don't expect loyalty from us. We are not your pawns." Before Kong Rong could reply, a soldier burst into the room, his armor dirtied, his face flushed with urgency. "Governor!" he shouted. "The broken bar. The refugee mobs are moving again. They've gathered by the southern camp and are marching toward the governor's residence. They're shouting about justice and a broken bar, something about yellow heaven." Gasps filled the room. A Chen's face went white. "It's yellow scarves. They're riled them up again. A broken bar." Captain Juan cursed under his breath. "We don't have the men to contain another surge." "Not without abandoning the gates." Kong Rong's heart pounded. He looked around the room at the sneering Zhao Feng, at the trembling nobles, at the panicked expressions of his loyal guards. He had no army left to hold Beihai, no allies, no choice. He stood, his voice hollow with weariness but steady. "Ready the carriages. We leave Beihai at once. We'll retreat east to Xiaopei, under the protection of Tao Qian." The officers saluted in silence, while the nobles exhaled in visible relief. Finally, Zhao Feng muttered, "Some sense." "We leave before noon," Kong Rong added sharply. "Gather your people. If you're not ready, we'll leave you behind." Zhao Feng stood and adjusted his robe, his lips curling into a satisfied smile. "Then I suggest you don't leave without me." As the captains began barking orders outside, the nobles dispersed to make preparations, unaware that as they escaped the fire of Beihai, they might be walking straight into the next inferno. Outside Prosperity Hall, a southern Beihai, the clatter of hooves and creaking wheels echoed through the merchant-lined street as Zhao Ming's carriages arrived at the sturdy gates of Prosperity Hall. Armed escorts moved aside to make way, their eyes scanning the surroundings as the morning sun glinted off spearheads and the brass fittings of trained wagons. Despite the tension in the air, the compound of the Murong family's trading and escort headquarters stood firm, its thick walls and trained guards a rare pocket of order in the restless city. Shopkeeper Wu, clad in his usual grey robes with a ledger tucked under one arm, stepped forward quickly upon seeing the lead carriage. "Young Master Zhao," he greeted, voice steady but eyes sharp, "we've begun moving more grain into the inner storehouses, and weapons are being inventoried as ordered." Murongda has tightened the security at the southern gate. The carriage door opened, and Zhao Ming stepped down, adjusting his dark cloak. With one smooth motion, he turned to extend a hand. "Careful," he murmured. King, cheeks flushed with the faint warmth of travel, took his hand and descended gracefully. Behind her, Yu Ying and the other girls followed, organizing themselves quickly with practiced coordination. A few of the younger ones glanced around in awe at the busy, fortified hall. Zhao Ming turned back to shopkeeper Wu. "There was a breach at the estate yesterday. Rioters forced their way into the inner courtyard. It's no longer safe there. I need you to arrange temporary lodging here for the girls." Shopkeeper Wu's brows furrowed, concern flickering behind his spectacles. "Was anyone hurt?" "Fortunately, no," Zhao Ming said calmly. "I returned in time." Wu exhaled. "Heaven bless." Then he turned and gestured to a nearby servant. "Take them to the west wing. The rooms there are empty, furnished but dusty. They'll need cleaning." Kim stepped forward, her sleeves still slightly wrinkled from travel. "It's all right. We'll clean them ourselves. Just show us where." Shopkeeper Wu gave her a respectful nod. "I'll send over bedding, fresh water, and cleaning tools shortly." The servant bowed and led the girls toward the west wing, their soft chatter fading behind the doors as they entered the Prosperity Hall to settle in. Zhao Ming remained behind. He glanced toward Yu Ying. "Once they're settled, I need you to scout the refugee camp." "I want to know what refugee camps are." Before he could finish, footsteps pounded against stone, and a mercenary with a red band tied around his arm came sprinting across the courtyard. "Where's Master Murongda?" Murongda stepped out from the side wing, his arms crossed and an oil-stained rag tucked into his belt. "Here." "What is it?" Zhao Ming and Yu Ying turned to join him as the mercenary halted, catching his breath. "It's the refugees," the man gasped. "They've begun moving." "All of them?" "Not just small groups. They're rallying behind some leader calling himself Fei Old Jiang. The one claiming to speak for the Yellow Heaven." Yu Ying's expression sharpened. "How many?" "Too many to count. Hundreds, maybe more." "They're marching through the southern streets toward the governor's office." He looked from Murongda to Zhao Ming. "Buta broken bar. There's still no movement from the city army." "Nothing from Kongrong." "His banners are still up, but the gates are quiet." Murongda's face darkened. "Damn it, that old fool might already be gone." Zhao Ming's fingers tightened behind his back. The worst-case scenario was starting to unfold. He turned to Yu Ying, his voice quiet but firm. "Change of plan. I need eyes not just on the refugee camper but also on the governor's residence. I want to know if Kongrong has abandoned the city." Yu Ying nodded with a faint smirk. "Understood. I'll be back before the next tea is poured." She vanished down the corridor, light on her feet as always. Murongda looked at Zhao Ming. "If the army's gone, we'll be facing a full-blown rebellion before sundown." Zhao Ming's eyes narrowed as he looked toward the south, where smoke hung faint in the sky like a warning. "Then it's time we decide if Beihai still has a future, a broken bar, or if we take it for ourselves." As Yu Ying disappeared past the archway, vanishing into the restless streets like a shadow at dusk, Zhao Ming turned back toward Murongda, his expression grim, eyes sharp with rising purpose. "This," Zhao Ming said quietly, "is the worst-case scenario." Murongda folded his arms, his brow lowering. "Seems like it." "The city's defenses are collapsing," Zhao Ming continued. "The government has fallen silent. Kongrong, whether out of cowardice or calculation, is likely abandoning Beihai altogether. From here on out, it's every man for himself." Murongda watched him in silence as the weight of those words settled in the air. "If that's the case," Zhao Ming went on, stepping closer, his voice steady despite the storm brewing outside, "then I will stop the yellow scarves and suppress the rioters. I'll take back the city by force, if necessary. If Kong Rong is leaving it behind, I'll claim it. Even if I must become a warlord to do it. There was no arrogance in his voice, only resolve. Zhao Ming met Murongda's gaze. But I can't do it alone. Will the Murong family stand with me? Murongda's expression didn't waver. Then, with a short huff, he broke into a laugh. You brat. He smacked Zhao Ming lightly on the arm. You're already family. Of course I'll help you. He turned to face the outer courtyard, where guards were still sharpening blades and unloading supplies. This city's already gone to the dogs. Even if we don't want to fight, we'll have no choice. These rioters are beyond reason now, and I don't believe for a second they rose up on their own. Someone's stirring the pot. He looked back at Zhao Ming with a smirk. Besides, if I don't help my nephew-in-law, little X will have my head. I can already hear her scolding me. Zhao Ming chuckled lightly at that. Murongda then raised his voice. Shopkeeper Wu. The old man came quickly from the side building, a scroll tucked under his arm. Master Murong? Burn the talisman. Wu blinked. The one for a yes. Now, with a respectful bow, Shopkeeper Wu took out a small, silk-wrapped bundle from within his sleeve. Inside lay a paper talisman inked with intricate azure runes. He stepped to the brazier by the side and ignited it with a taper. The paper flared in a brief, brilliant blue flame, its spiritual signal soaring toward Jade Heart Peak, to the Azure Sect, where Murong's summons would be heard. As the last ashes drifted away, Murongda turned back to Zhao Ming, his face serious once more. You have my sword, and my men, he said. But from this point on, you lead. What's our next move? Zhao Ming didn't hesitate. He pointed toward the west. The western gate, he said. If we're to survive and maintain control, we need a safe entry and exit from the city. If the rioters push harder or the yellow scarves advance, we can't afford to be cornered. That gate is our lifeline. Murongda nodded. Agreed. We'll secure a perimeter, Zhao Ming continued. From Prosperity Hall, through the Murong estate, and up to the western gate. If we can manage it, we should even consider tearing down part of the gate itself. That way, no one can trap us in Sadia, whether the yellow scarves or some army claiming to restore order. Murongda didn't blink. I'll get it done. He called over one of the mercenary captains, a tall, sun-browned man with a saber strapped across his back. Secure the route to the western gate, Murongda instructed. Don't engage unless necessary. Clear the way. Patrols every 100 paces. Make sure no Ania gets the drop on us. The captain saluted. Understood. He barked an order, and a team of mercenaries swiftly formed up and left through the side gate, heading out into the smoke-laced city. Zhao Ming stepped beside Murongda. We don't need to seize the gate just yet, only ensure the path to it remains open. Once we have that, we can fortify our position and expand as needed. Murongda grunted in agreement. Good thinking. With the orders given, the two men stood in silence for a moment, watching the preparations unfold in the courtyard. Around them, servants and guards moved quickly, reinforcing doors, stacking grain, and checking weapons. The girls had settled into the west wing, already cleaning and unpacking. The Prosperity Hall was becoming not just a stronghold, but a fledgling command center. Zhao Ming exhaled quietly, his gaze drifting toward the city skyline, where the first tendrils of smoke were curling higher. Now we wait, he murmured, until Yu Ying returns. And then? Murongda asked. Zhao Ming's eyes narrowed. Then we decide. As the sun climbed higher, casting a dull light over the smoke-stained skyline of Beihai, the gate to Prosperity Hall creaked open. Yu Ying returned, her boots dusty and her outer robe smelling faintly of ash and the grime of the streets. Zhao Ming stood waiting near the courtyard, arms folded, a faint smile tugging at his lips as she approached. You're late, he said with mock sternness, raising an eyebrow. At this rate, I bet even King Tao could have cooked a proper dish before you got back. Yu Ying scoffed, brushing a strand of wind-blown hair behind her ear. HMPH. That brat might poison someone before learning how to pick herbs properly. Zhao Ming chuckled. So? What took you so long? I made a full circle around the governor's office, she replied, her tone turning serious. It's a mess. The nobles are trying to flee. Those with functioning carriages are already heading north. The ones whose carriages were damaged during the riots yesterday are fighting each other, even stealing wagons from their fellow nobles. I saw two men in brocade robes sprawling in the mud like street dogs. Zhao Ming frowned. So they've lost their minds completely. A broken bar. Yu Ying nodded. Some of them retreated to the noble district. Not sure if they plan to hold out or just collect what silver they can before making a run for it. But they're done with Kong Rong. No one's waiting for orders anymore. And the rioters? Lootings started again. Fires too. You can see the smoke rising from the east quarter, she said, gesturing behind her. The mob is still heading towards Zhao Feng's manor. Words out about the missing girls. I think they're hoping to find Aunt Ursa or take revenge. Zhao Ming's eyes narrowed. Let them dig through that snake's den. Yu Ying hesitated before adding, I also saw something else. See Zhao Feng and Kong Rong. They boarded their carriages and were escorted by what's left of the city guard. They're heading west. Looks like they're abandoning the city altogether. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The sounds of movement from inside the hauler, the shuffle of boots, the creak of grates, the quiet voices of Murong men and refugee girls preparing for evacuation felt distant. Yu Ying's voice was quiet now. What will you do, young master? Zhao Ming drew a slow breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon beyond the rooftops. I'll stop the riots, even if it means spilling blood. If those meant to govern have turned tail, then I'll take over Beihai myself. No more waiting, no more hiding. Yu Ying studied his face. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only the calm certainty of a man who had already made his choice. A broken bar, then I'll fight by your side, she said softly, bowing her head. Zhao Ming stood by the stone steps of Prosperity Hall, watching the haze of smoke curling in the distance. His expression darkened, contemplative, as he glanced at Yu Ying beside him, her posture alert and balanced despite the weariness in her eyes. He turned slightly. What about the Jade Elegance Pavilion? What will they do in this chaos? Yu Ying didn't hesitate. Already fortified. I received a report from one of our operatives during the scout. The pavilion girls stayed alert through the night to lock down the entrances, barred the windows. If it comes to the worst, they'll retreat to the pier and board the ship waiting off the northern bank. Zhao Ming nodded in approval, but Yu Ying wasn't finished. There's a message from Lady Yu, she added, glancing at him sideways. If you're planning something grander, which I'm sure you area she wants in, she asks that you count her and her forces into your calculations. A smirk curled her lips. She crossed her arms and, in a teasing lilt that mimicked Lady Yu's flirtatious tone, added, of course, once all this is over, she expects a very fair share of the profit. You wouldn't disappoint a lady, would you, young master? Zhao Ming laughed under his breath, the tension easing from his brow. That woman a broken bar, he muttered, then reached out to tousle Yu Ying's hair with playful familiarity. She wrinkled her nose and batted his hand away. Hey, don't pout, he said, still chuckling. I thought spies were supposed to be all grace and mystery. Not when we're dealing with you, she replied dryly. Zhao Ming's eyes narrowed slightly in thought. You were scouting alone? Yu Ying smirked. Who said that? With a sharp whistle, she turned toward the courtyard. 5 figures emerged from the shadows, silent, swift, clad in tight-fitting assassin's garb, their faces veiled and posture ready. They bowed in sync as they approached. Yu Ying tilted her head toward Zhao Ming. These 5 are from Lady Yu's operative corps. You can give them orders directly. Are there to treat your words as if spoken by Lady Yu herself. Zhao Ming gave a firm nod to the girls, his tone steady and direct. Inform Lady Yu that we're moving to take over the city. Beihai won't fall into madness. We'll seize control and restore order. He paused, then added, also, get word to Xiliang at Eastern Hill Settlement. Tell him the riots are spreading fast. He's to coordinate with Jade Elegance Pavilion for the time being. No lone action. We need cohesion. Yu Ying nodded as the assassins murmured acknowledgement and faded into the shadows once more. Weapons? Zhao Ming asked. Swords, bucklers, light shields, Yu Ying replied. Enough for a street fight, if needed. Good. He looked back toward the smoke rising above Beihai's rooftops. Have your operatives monitor refugee movements, the area around the governor's office, and the west gate. If the mob starts heading west, or the governor's men try to make a last stand, or if anyone breaches the office building, I want to know the moment it happens. Yu Ying relayed his instructions to the remaining girls in a series of hand signals. Without a word, they scattered like mist in different directions. While the messenger for Lady Yu is still waiting next to Yu Ying, Zhao Ming turned to her again. "Come with me," he said, gesturing toward the inner hall. "Pick up the silent fang. You might need it before this day is over." Yu Ying's eyes lit up at the mention of the specialized sniper crossbow, sleek and deadly. "Now that," she said with a grin, "is the kind of gift I like." Together, they strode back into Prosperity Hall, readying for the storm to come. Zhao Ming stepped into the inner courtyard of Prosperity Hall, the air thick with tension and the smell of oiled weapons. Men moved in organized lines, some strapping on leather armor, others checking bundles of arrows or testing the weight of their spears. Mercenaries, retainers, and hand-picked guards from the Murong family moved like parts of a well-trained machine under Murongda's steady direction. Murongda stood at the center, barking orders as two unit leaders saluted and marched off. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing scarred forearms, and sweat gleamed along his brow despite the cool morning. He turned as Zhao Ming approached. "Little Zhao, you're just in time," Murongda said, wiping his hands. "Wen Tao and Uncle Qian have been moved to the back of the compound. Safer there in case things turn ugly." Zhao Ming nodded. "Good." "And the repeating crossbows?" "Ready," Murongda answered, gesturing toward a long table set against the inner wall. "I've assembled 40 men and split them into a single crossbow unit. For now, they've been trained to handle the loading and firing." And he pointed to a wooden crate on the table, its lid propped open. 82 silent fangs are prepped and oiled. "I figured you'd want them nearby." Zhao Ming's gaze sharpened as he crossed to the crate. The silent sniper crossbow gleamed under the pale light, its limbs slender and deadly. "Yu Ying," he called without looking up. "Take one and arm it. The second one, give to Lady Yu. In case things go sideways." Yu Ying stepped forward, quiet as always, but with purpose in her stride. She inspected the crossbow briefly, then picked it up with a fluid motion and began checking the draw mechanism and setting in the specially designed steel bolts. "We'll deliver it." "Lady Yu will want to be in position anyway." Turning back to Murongda, Zhao Ming continued, "Split the crossbow unit. 2 teams, 20 each. Assign 20 shield bearers at N for Riacha to act as a screen. Keep extra arrow bundles with them. We'll need heavy suppressive fire if things go the way I expect." Murongda grunted in agreement. A wall of bolts, enough to turn a charging mob into a panicked stampede. Once Yu Ying finished assembling her weapon, Zhao Ming unfolded the map of Beihai on the nearest table. The parchment was heavy, lined with charcoal markings and hastily inked updates. His fingers traced a path from the governor's office plaza to the edge of the west gate. "Here's what we're going to do," he began, his voice calm but steeled with authority. "The governor's office is going to be overwhelmed. If my guess is right, the remaining city forces will hold just long enough to get torn apart. But we wait. Let the rioters exhaust themselves in the first wave. Once they're bloodied, confused, and starting to slower, then we move." He tapped the space between Prosperity Hall and the governor's office. "The crossbow units will take formation here and here. Use elevation and walls for cover. When I give the signal, we suppress. Fire in volleys. Every bolt counts. They're untrained, undisciplined. A sudden rain of steel in their face will turn hesitation into panic." Murongda nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. "And when they start breaking formation," Zhao Ming's tone dropped, "that's when their leaders will try to rally them. And that's when Yu Ying takes them out." Silent and clean. No grand speeches, no glory, just a bolt between the eyes. Yu Ying smirked lightly, securing the crossbow across her back. "Just the way I like it." "But don't expect only one target," Zhao Ming added, almost to himself. "There will be more than one leader. I'm sure of it." Murongda frowned. "You sound certain?" Zhao Ming's eyes flickered briefly. "Let's just say a broken bar. I have a feeling." Then, turning to one of the remaining operatives still hidden in the shadows near the courtyard entrance, he issued the final order. "Deliver the second silent fang to Lady Yu. Tell her we're moving ahead with the suppression plan. Have her coordinate from the Jade Elegance Pavilion. If possible, Use smoke bombs or gas or anything to break the rioters' nerve and scatter them. We'll need chaos on our side." The girl saluted without a word and disappeared like a wisp of wind. Zhao Ming exhaled, glancing toward the sky where smoke from the distant fires darkened the horizon. "This city may already be lost, but I'll be damned if I let it fall to a mob of fools." Without a fight, Yu Ying stepped up beside him, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The carriage rocked violently as its wheels bounced over shattered cobblestones and the splintered remains of street barricades. Outside, the clash of steel on steel echoed in the narrow alleyways of panicked shouts from city guards, the screams of wounded rioters, the stampede of boots trying to break through the chaos. Kong Rong sat inside the swaying carriage, his knuckles white as he clutched the lacquered armrest for support. Another jolt threw him sideways. He cursed and slammed his fist against the thin wall. "Faster, damn it! Open the way!" From the front, the guard captain barked orders as his unit fought to clear a path to the western gate. "Form a wedge. Shields up, I drive them back." The sound of blades meeting flesh followed, and then the wet thump of bodies hitting the ground. Kong Rong gritted his teeth, sweat clinging to his powdered brow despite the chill morning air that filtered in through the carriage curtains. His once pristine robes were wrinkled and damp, a flask of wine uncapped in his pannier rolling at his feet. "How did it come to these a broken bar?" he muttered, rubbing his temples with trembling fingers. Only days ago, he had strutted through the halls of the governor's office like a peacock in full bloom, hosting dinners for the city's elite, laughing at court gossip, toasting with Zhao Feng over their shared schemes. He had thought himself cleverer, positioning himself between factions, appeasing the eunuch's nephew by indulging his twisted tastes, and ensuring his place under the imperial umbrella. Perhaps he had gone too far. "Maybe I shouldn't have let him take the girls." A broken bar, Kong Rong whispered, his voice bitter with hindsight. "Kidnapping refugee girls, so what was I thinking? A governor, lowering himself to trafficker for favor for that beast?" A tremor of fear ran through him, not for what had been done, but for how it had all spiraled out of control. Yesterday, the rioters had raged like wildfire through the outer districts, and now even the noble quarters were in upheaval. He had seen Thema barons and silk-robed officials clawing at each other for space in fleeing carriages, some with bloodied hands, some with their manners already burning behind them. "Someone must have betrayed me," he hissed. "It must be a scheme." That vulture lose it perhaps, or his rat daughter know a broken bar may be one of the other northern lords. Yes, a broken bar they wanted Beihai to fall. He clutched at the curtain and pulled it aside. Smoke curled over the rooftops in thick black veins. Screams still echoed from somewhere behind, and in the near distance, he saw figures running as civilians, guards, looters, so it was impossible to tell them apart anymore. The western gate loomed far ahead. Guards were still fighting near its base, holding it open just wide enough for carriages to squeeze through. If they could get past the bottleneck, they could escape. He flee to one of the loyalist strongholds further west. Perhaps King Province, perhaps even toward the coastline. Beihai was lost. That much was certain. Kong Rong leaned back heavily against the padded seat, chest rising and falling. "Let it burn," he muttered. "This city and all its ungrateful worms." A flicker of madness gleamed in his eyes now. Cold, calculating hatred replaced his panic. "I'll return. With soldiers. With silver. I'll make them all pay the rioters, the nobles who fled, even Zhao Feng, if he dares show weakness." He clenched his fists, eyes locked on the narrow strip of sky visible through the curtain slit. "They think they've seen the end of me, a broken bar, but I'm not finished yet."